This is Kim Hammer, pastor of Saline Baptist Church in the community of Tull outside Benton, with your devotion taken from the book of Joshua chapter 2, beginning with verse 1. The first thing we see in verse 1 is that Joshua secretly picked 2 spies that he was going to send into the promised land in order to bring back some intel, some information about the landscape of the land, and in order that he might use it to develop his battle strategy as he went in to conquer those lands as God has promised that he was going to deliver them. Now, Joshua was familiar with what it was like to be in the role of a spy. I can't help but believe that he chose 2 individuals that he aligned with 40 years earlier as far as their attitude, that they were going to go in, and yes, they were going to look at the situation through the eyes of reality, but they were going to let their report be guided by their spirituality. And so Joshua realized that over a 40-year period of time, the landscape could change, and he wanted a up-to-the-date assessment of what he was going to be encountering when he crossed the River Jordan. The one thing he told them to do with particular attention was to look at the city of Jericho, because Jericho was going to be the first major battle that they would have whenever they crossed over the River Jordan. The Bible tells us it was a fortified city, so it was a city to be reckoned with, and he wanted to have a good assessment of the stronghold of the city. Now, I do think that there was a strategic purpose on the part of God and also on the part of Joshua. As they went into the promised land and they encountered this fortified city, as they would defeat it, it would send a message to the rest of the nations that they were going to encounter, that they were have to deal with the force of God. But also it would send a message to the nation of Israel that if they were able to conquer that city, there wasn't anything else that God wouldn't help them do. And so it was going to be the first battle that they would encounter, but it would bring with it a significant victory, not only for the nation of Israel, but it would also send a message of defeat to the rest of the nations that they were going to conquer. God often puts big challenges, fortified challenges, in front of us because he wants us to be dependent upon him from the very beginning of the battle. And if we will trust God, like Joshua did, and like the nation of Israel did, regardless of whatever the obstacle, regardless of whatever the fortified force is in front of us, God will defeat it, and it will bring an encouraging message to us that if he will help do that, what else does he want to help do for us in our life? Now, there is a question of why would God send 2 spies when he had already promised to deliver the promised land to them? Other than the practical perspective, which is the first point, when you look at life, it's a balance of 3 things: practicality, spirituality, and reality. And if you would, think about it like an arrowhead, if you would. Practicality and reality are the 2 lower points, but spirituality is what pierces and what allows us to experience the victories in life. God wants us to live a balanced life, being practical, being spiritual, and in the midst of it all, he will show us the reality. And the reality is that as we face our fortified enemies, if we will trust God, no matter how big the walls may be, he will bring them down.